Welcome back, everybody. We're super excited to have a live studio audience of teachers today. Yeah, now it's their chance to raise their hands and ask questions. Dr. John Duffy is a clinical psychologist and author. He specializes in parenting and relationships, and he agreed to stick around and answer some questions. So let me just ask, does anybody have a question? I'll hand the mic to you. So you want to hand it back that way? That would be great. And just tell us, if you would, your name and maybe the grade you teach in at what school.
Hi, good morning. My name is Marisol Alamo, and I'm actually the Dean of Students and the Admissions Director for Bruce Guadalupe Community School. My question for you, Doctor, is bullying. We touched upon that subject. Yeah. It's a very common term. I see it misused by students and parents excessively, and it causes a big disturbance. Yeah. I try to help. In our school, we try to really minimize the word bullying because I think it's very overused. Right. And so what advice can you give us to help us with that?
That's a really, really good
hot
point.
Topic.
Yeah, we kind of paint with a really, really broad brush, right? So you can go from like this kind of like little bit of ribbing and mistreatment, and we call it bullying. And bullying is such a charged word these days. Yes. That I think we have to change the nature of that. So I'm really glad you asked the question. Because we need to look at it as something other than bullying, unless it's in the extreme. Sometimes there's just conflicts that need to be resolved between kids. Sometimes kids are going to be harsh to one another, nasty to one another. And with social media, it adds a whole new dimension to it, because this can happen online, and there's a fine line. I think we know bullying when we see it, because, and you guys know, when you look into a kid's eyes who's really been bullied, you can see the helplessness, right? Yeah. But it's personal, it's direct, it's public.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing, but a lot of the things that happen between kids just happen between kids, and sometimes they're going to disagree, and sometimes social groups are going to separate, and that's just normal. And I think it's really important. I think you bring up a really important point, that we draw a line between those two things and step back sometimes.
And sort of exercise caution as it relates to labeling it as such.
Right.
Okay, really good.
So get out the facts.
Go ahead and pass the microphone forward there. What's your question? Tell us your name and the grade that you teach.
I am Grace Chamberlain. I currently teach at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School, but I taught Erica Lofton with Girls in Action at Milwaukee College Prep. My question is kind of in relation to Erica's violence prevention program. So in Milwaukee, there are very few very good high schools. And in order to get into them, you have to have good test scores, and you have to send those in. So there is a lot of pressure on testing, and a lot of it so they can get into good high schools. And frankly, in Milwaukee, that can be a life and death. That's how it can determine your life, how you end up. So what do you suggest we do about that?
So I think she's saying too, like, how do you, it is important because they want to get into good school, but how do you alleviate the stress and anxiety of that and make them still feel like they're valuable?
Right, right. So you want to alleviate the stress and still provide those children the opportunity to thrive in the best possible learning environment, right? And the safest learning environment, right? So it's not like the test is at all irrelevant. It's really, really important. So I find, like, you know, where I live, that if you kind of graduate the exposure to the testing material, it makes the stress a little more palatable, so it doesn't feel like all at once I'm being overwhelmed. And to lay on a child like, you know, this is your sole chance, I think is really, really heavy. But to say we're going to work on collectively, collaboratively, on this test so that we can get you into the best possible learning environment that suits you best. And I think we have to be careful what we say to our kids, even about like the dangers of certain high schools. I think we have to really be smart and cautious and let them know, like, what we're looking for them is a safe, best learning environment for them, and ease their way into how difficult the testing can be.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Tricky.
You taught one of our girls too, right?
I did. I was lucky enough to teach Erica last year. I'm Rishi Raghunath, and I teach at University School 9th grade history. And I guess I'm not sure if this will be a question or a comment. One key piece I feel is, I think, showing more compassion towards this generation of kids. I think what I struggle with as a teacher is oftentimes just hearing how quick people are to dismiss the youth and to say that, you know, you and your technology, you and this, it was easier in my days. And so I struggle. So if there's advice on that, and showing compassion and giving them the tools to be resilient.
Bless you, man.
And
What
not
is your
being
what is your
afraid
first
of
name?
Rishi.
Rishi. Rishi, I love your point. I mean, we are so quick to dismiss this generation of kids so easily as being vapid, stuck on their phones, ruining the language, not really caring. And in fact, those of us who work with these kids realize, wow, they're actually really big-hearted and thoughtful and
innovative.
active and innovative, right? And we dismiss that so readily. So to pause on that note and recognize that those things can all exist in the same environment, right? That they can be really driven by social media. And if social media were around when we were all kids, we would have been as well, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily show this, like, you know, vapidness, but that they're actually really remarkable people. And if we dismiss them, they're savvy enough to pick up on that, you know? So it's important that we don't do that. Really, really critical that we keep that in mind every day. Parents, teachers, educators, psychologists, everyone.
Awesome. Quick question, Dr. Duffy, go ahead.
I'm Kristen Mikowski. I teach at East Troy High School, and it might be because I teach physics, but my students have a hard time taking risk. And how can I reduce the anxiety regarding and getting them to push forward and take those risks?
Yeah. I can already tell that this whole group feels so safe, you know, and that's one thing the kids, I think we underestimate how unsafe they feel in a really unpredictable world. So if you guys as teachers can provide a safe environment for them to learn and explore and take risks, if you are the available teachers, then I think they're going to get where they need to go. And I think it's tricky for all of us because I think they start from a place of caution. So if you can provide them a place where it feels like, okay, this school, this classroom, this teacher is safe for me, they're going to be more willing to venture out and take risks.
Do you think kids these days respond more to that positive pushing and kind of, you know, building them up, or is it kind of a pushing mentality?
I think it's both. I think you can encourage kids and let them know, even if they lack faith in themselves, which an awful lot of kids these days do, that we have faith in them, that we know that they can, and that we've got their backs, especially early on in the risk-taking process.
Thank you,
That's
Dr.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, all of you. Great questions, you guys. That was fantastic.